You are now listening to Out of the Blank.
Welcome to another episode of Out of the Blank podcast. I'm here with Dr. Judith Pardo-Pérez.
Yeah, hi.
You like that emphasis I did on your name?
Yeah, it's good. It's perfect.
So, Judith, tell me a little bit about yourself and what do you do professionally?
I come from Chile, so from South America, and I am a paleontologist. I am working now in the University of Magallanes. It is located in the southernmost part of Chile, so in the southern Patagonia. And I guess this one is the last university in the continent.
See, what's so interesting for a lot of people that are listening, they're going to think when it comes to paleontology, I don't think a lot of people either really know what it is.
I,
It's the study of dinosaurs, but they're going to remember it from an old TV show called Friends, where there was a person on there named Ross Geller. I don't know if
yeah, yeah.
you've ever seen that show, but
Yeah.
how did you get started as a paleontologist? Like, what's your fascination with paleontology?
Well, it started like actually in the university. When I was studying, I studied biology in the university here in this university, where I am working now. And I had a lecture on paleontology, and I was so interested after that about geology and rocks and all stuff. And at that time in the university there was nothing about paleontology or related, only about invertebrates, but very small ones, the ones that you have to look up in the microscope. And I didn't wanted that. I wanted the big ones, the big bones, you know. So I started working in the archaeology department, which is they do research on humans and all humans, and life of these humans during, I don't know, it's not extinct, it's not like fossils, you know, because fossils are a lot more older. But I started there cleaning bones and of ancient animals. And then a friend of mine went to an expedition in the border of of a glacier. Actually, he went to study an insect that was living in the glacier. And he was a student at that time, and he went with some other researchers from the university and glaciologists. And walking by the rocks, going to the glacier, they found the rest of an animal that nobody know which animal it was. So when he came back to the university, he showed me the pictures, and we started researching it, and we discovered that it was an ichthyosaur, which is an ancient marine reptile, very old, like 140 million years old. And then I started to be more interested, and I got the support of the university to go to this place and to look up for more, and we found more. And then I started doing my specialization on this animal.
Now, would you say this type of animal is the one that you want to prioritize in researching rather than focusing on the whole kind of expanding knowledge of paleontology?
Yeah, well, because this one is older than the one that the start that I was doing before. Is from the Cretaceous, and actually it's a coincidence. So I took the chance because nobody was doing research on this animal. Actually, nobody was doing research on this animal in the country, and so I started.
What's so funny is that, and it's called an Ichthyosaurus. Is that Ichthyosaurs?
It's ichthyosaurs.
Ichthyosaurus. See, even
Yeah.
saying that, I wonder who creates the names of these things, because it's like you read the name of it and then you see what it is and you're like, oh, that's exactly what that would look like. You know what I mean? It's
Uh-huh.
like that name fits it perfectly. It's kind of looks a lot like an ancestor, I would say, to the marlin.
To the what? Sorry.
the marlin, the giant fish with like, it's like a swordfish. It looks like an ancestor to that.
Yeah, well, but yeah, it looks like a fish. Actually, it looks like a dolphin, but it has nothing related with mammals or with fish. This is a reptile, so it's a marine reptile. It had lungs, so this animal has to go to the surface to breathe constantly, and but it was so adapted to live in the water that it was not necessary to go to the to land eggs, like turtles or crocodiles. So this animal developed a kind of placenta in which the embryos were developed. So the embryos were born in the water. So therefore it's so amazing because it's so enigmatic how it was so well adapted to this environment and why it became extinct. There is no uh, descent of this animal living now, not like crocodiles, because we also have extinct crocodiles, and we have crocodiles now. There were also extinct turtles, and we have turtles now, but not ichthyosaurs.
Now, with ichthyosaurs, you're kind of studying and finding these fossils and things. These give you information and like kind of more of an aspiration or a wantingness to look up more information about what you've discovered as well. This is probably where a lot of your knowledge has come from.
Yes. Yeah.
And what's fascinating is that I watched a documentary on Netflix a few years ago called Dino Fish. I don't know if you've ever heard of it.
No, actually not.
It's, you might actually like it. It's they found a dinosaur or a fish that is from like the dinosaur period, like a long time ago. I think they ranged it out at like, I couldn't tell you the exact number. I think it was like 6 million or something years ago. But what happened was they thought this fish had long died out. It's like, it's the Coelacanth, I think it's how you pronounce it. Something of that, they're weird names. I'm sorry. There's the people that name them sound like they get them off a Laffy Taffy wrapper, but they make sense. But when they found this fish, they thought it died long ago, but what happened was they had a guy, a researcher that was down there excavating the area, that actually walked by a fish market and noticed that these people that were indigenous to that area started selling this fish. And he was like, that doesn't look like anything I've ever seen before. And he got a closer look at it and found that it was this prehistoric fish that had, they thought had long died out. Turns out what was happening was, with kind of how space is, um, deep down in the water, it seems time moves at a different pace. It seems like a year up here is a little bit different when you're underwater so deep. So these fish were down there living, and the climate, no sunlight, anything like that, the passage of time seemed to be a little bit different. But what was happening was all the fishermen in this area were using dynamite and using all these other types of things to be able to fish with, causing a very kind of disruptive nature to the habitat there, and actually caused these fish to be affected. And they started to rise, and people started catching these fish, and it became really common. Where now it's like I forgot where exactly it is. It's off the coast of Africa, but they have this whole section as a reserve now because they started finding all these fish, and now they're able to replicate the DNA from it.
Wow. Yeah, you have to give me the name of the documentary later so
The
I can
document
watch it.
the documentary is called Dino Fish. Literally, that guy did not go far for that name at all. He just said Dino Fish, and it was,
It's like a coelacanth. It is coelacanth.
yeah.
Yeah, I know the story. Well, I haven't watched the documentary, but I know about this fish. Yeah, it's amazing. It was thought that was extinct, but then they found it.
Yeah, that's what always, like, when everybody thinks of like dinosaurs that walk the earth today, you'll hear someone go, "Oh, a bird, they're just dinosaurs," or you'll see a crocodile and you'll be like, "That thing's a
Yeah.
dinosaur." But I'm like, what always fascinated me when we used to go to, like, on school field trips, we used to go to nature museums and we go to see all the
Hmm.
dinosaurs and all these types of things. Everybody was so fascinated with the T-Rex and all this type of stuff. But I was that guy wandering in the back looking at like all the other types of things that came from that period, such as like a lot that happened to do with coming out of the sea. I mean, I
Yeah.
was always a fan of the Megalodon, all these like giant,
Mhm.
massive sea creatures and stuff, and just how amazing they were for it. Hell, if I play a Jurassic Park video game now, you bet I'm making an aquatic section because that's all I'm fascinated with. It was just
But
it's so crazy to see because a lot of what is in the sea that we barely understand, it
yeah.
could be a lot scarier and a lot bigger too.
Yeah, I always say that undersea is like another universe. There are so many things that we don't know. There are so many animals undiscovered. And yeah, well, in my case, I doubt that ichthyosaurs were living there down because as they have lungs, they will have to come back to the surface to breathe, and someone will see it. Will look weird animal over there. So, but I really think it's amazing. I also like a lot all the undersea.
Do you find that with just doing your research in general, like how do you take steps into researching things? Is it just on the stuff that you've kind of found, or do you do a lot of kind of more of information based where you're kind of reading books and just trying to study up your knowledge as much as possible?
Do you mean based on research, on investigations of what I do with these animals
Yeah, like if I'm gonna go
when I
out
find it?
if I'm gonna
Uh-huh.
go out and look for beach shells or something, and
Uh-huh.
then I find a specific shell or something, I'll look up what that shell is. Is that how you conclude
Uh-huh.
your
Uh-huh.
research? Is that how you find your
Yeah.
research or go into it?
Yeah, yeah. Actually, you go there, you find the stuff, and then you have to see what is it because I know now which is the animals that I am discovering, but it's not just finishing. It's an ichthyosaur, and that's the end. You have to describe the species because there were a lot of different species. So according to the anatomy of the animals, there are certain differentiation between certain bones in the skeleton of ichthyosaurs, and it changed through the time, because this particular animal was living between the Triassic and the Cretaceous, so between 240 and 90 million years ago. So imagine how it evolved and how different it could be in so many millions of years. So we have different species, and according to the time where it was found, and comparing with some other species of the world of the same age, you can get it. Or sometimes you don't get it, and you start wondering if it is a new species. And here in the Patagonia, in the fossil area where I am working, it is in the border of the name is Tinta Glacier, and we have found a lot, so it's amazing. There we have found more than 50 complete ichthyosaurs articulated. So you go there, you walk in the stones, and you found this amazing animal. Like, it's so scary when you see it because it's complete and exposed. And what it happened is that the glacier is melting, so in the retreat, it lets expose the because it take part of the stones, and so a layer of bones is exposed in the stones. I don't know if you understand what I mean,
Yeah,
but
is this a problem with global warming? The fact that the glacier is kind of melting off. I mean, it seems like it's very beneficial for you because you're able to kind of find the fossils a little bit easier now. But
yeah.
when it comes to the preservation of them as well, see what's crazy
Yeah,
when I'm looking at like some of the pictures, like you looking at this stone and kind of seeing how it's like perfectly, it seems like it's perfect, like perfectly preserved, like something like someone literally like protected it for so long. But it's like,
yeah.
how often do you guys come across a fossil, or how often do you come across something that's been so damaged that you have to repair it?
Yeah. Yeah, actually, we are very lucky because we have this amazing preservation, but I have worked in some other locations in the planet, and it's not like that. So you find only, for example, some bones of the paddle or some vertebral column bones, and very isolated. So here we are very lucky to find these animals complete and articulated. But as you say, it's also it's also complicated according to the preservation because it was kind of protected during all these years by this glacier. And now with the climate change, the glacier is melting. This is one of the glaciers that is melting most fast in the Patagonia. and which is good for me because I found fossils, but obviously it's not good for the planet. But now the bones are exposed, and what happened now, what we see is that the glacier that was covering, with the weight of the glacier, it causes some fractures on the stone, and then with the retreat, there are some marks, like scratches of the direction in which the glacier was melting or retreating. So you see that in the exposed rocks. So you see deep fractures that are crossing the bones, and also these scratches. And this area is very cold, and it's also windy and raining and snowing a lot. So the weather, what's happening is that the rains filter in these fractures, and also there are some differentiations of the temperature between day and night. So rocks is contracting and compressing and changing. So it causes like micro explosions in the rock.
Like little minor fractures that go into the stone, causing
Yeah,
like a disruption
exactly.
really in the
Yeah,
resource or
yeah,
the fossil that you're looking at. See, what's crazy about that is there's a similar thing going on with that. So I'm guessing because with the amount of foot traffic, how there's not that much of it there, that's probably why a lot of it is perfectly preserved, and you do find a lot of it because it's kind of been less discovered than most of the planet. Um,
yeah,
and it's weird because I can use that example. In Hawaii, they have coral in the ocean, a little bit far out. What's been happening is with all the increase in foot traffic, with Hawaii becoming a destination hotspot for a lot of tourists, they don't understand that you cannot stand on the coral. So I went there about 6 years ago, and then I went back probably 2 years ago, and about 45% of the coral population had died from that 3-year difference.
yeah, yeah. That's very sad. So yeah, lucky for me, this area is protected by the National Forest Corporation. This area is inside of a national park. It is the Torres del Paine National Park, and which is a beautiful national park from Chile. I think one of the most beautiful in the country. And so the National Forest Corporation doesn't allow the entrance of tourists to these areas, only scientists. So this is in part good because we still have protected the specimens. Anyway, if you go there, the area is so big that you need the GPS coordinate to find them. It's not like very easy because you have to climb the cliff and then go down and here and there. So, but they are over there. It's an area of around 20 square kilometers. Um,
If I had to ask you, what is one of your most memorable moments so far in the field? Can you explain to me that memory?
I think I have a couple. I have two, maybe.
Okay,
I think
shoot
the
them
first
off.
one,
Let's hear them.
yeah, I think the first one was when I found the first ichthyosaur, and I think, yeah, I was 21 years old, and I went with the glaciologists and other researchers. I was still studying in the university, and we were trying to find the ichthyosaur that my friend found. And we were walking in the stones, and then in a moment I turned and I asked them, "Is that one the one that you're looking for?" They say, "No, that one is a new one. We haven't seen that one." And that was so amazing to see the real bones of an animal there stuck in the stone, and they have a so different color and look so creepy. And I felt, yeah, that I think that was because it was my first find and my first discovery.
How difficult is it for you to find, like, be able to spot one though? Because I mean, you're looking through like these rock formations that all seem like, what's really crazy about these types of rocks is that they have an imprinting onto them, like a design feature where it looks like if you're looking at a distance, it could be something, but how can you distinctly tell that there's a fossil there?
That well, because you see structures of animals, um, when you find something, it's not something irregular. It has a structure, so you clearly see that it's an animal when you find a shell, because we also have invertebrates there. and we have fishes too. I am focusing only in the ichthyosaurs, but I need more researchers to work with me in the area to study the invertebrates and the other fishes. And so you see a fish, you know how is the anatomy of a fish, no?
Yeah,
And when you eat a fish, it's the skeleton there, and the same skeleton you find it there, so you see clearly that it's a fish.
I know. It just I see what fascinates me is the way you're explaining it makes it seem like it's perfectly like imprinted to where someone could just walk by and be like, "Hey, there's a fish there."
Yeah, 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 but it's like that.
Are you serious? It's really like
Yeah,
that? Holy crap.
really, really.
I'm thinking you're going like with a magnifying glass to every single
No, no.
speck
The
of the
area
rock.
is amazing. The area is really amazing. Actually, I went in 2017. I went with a couple of master students from the university. They went to help me because I wanted to check the state of preservation of the bones because I was so worried about the erosion and so on. So we went and I saw the glacier is more retreated. So I say, let's explore that area because I feel that we will find something there. Actually, there is a scientific methodology to find, of course, but I always say, I think it's this area, but let's go there. And then the students were asking me how they will recognize that it's a fossil when they see it. And because they saw so many different stones in the area and they were trying to find something and say how I will see that it's a fossil. And I say you will know that it's a fossil when you see it because it's totally different. And then he found it. He found an almost complete ichthyosaur, and we went to check it. I recognize because now, well, I have more experience, so I can recognize the species almost like super fast. And we were checking. I was checking inside, and then we saw small bones of embryo. So
Mm.
there were five embryo in the stomach of the mother. So we saw the skulls and the small teeth of the babies, and that was so amazing because actually we didn't know that embryos, the teeth of embryos were developed during the gestation development. So we thought that maybe they developed teeth after they were born for hunting, but actually they were born with teeth. So it means that they were prepared to hunt immediately after they were born. So this is things that we haven't published yet because the material is still in the field. We need to excavate it, and always the logistic is so expensive. So what I am trying to do now is to find some funding from Chilean government or some other government from some other country. And
You would think with all your findings and everything that they would be funding this pretty heavily. It seems like you guys are finding a lot of stuff. It's not just like you go out every once in a while and find something. It seems like you guys are uncovering almost every trip.
yeah, yeah, and it's a lot of things that we need to learn and to research on these animals because we also have another female ichthyosaur also pregnant. It's from the same species of the other one. It's in the same level, so but it's in another state of gestation. So we can also see how embryos develop on ichthyosaurs, for example. Um, Besides the anatomy and tell me.
With studying paleontology and kind of all the information that you've been pulling out of just this species in general, don't you think that, like, what's your estimated thinking of where technology could be able to recreate one of these things? I know at the ending of 2018, heading into 2019, they actually were able to recreate a mammoth, a clone of one, only because they were able to pull out such perfectly extracted DNA from glaciers. I'm thinking that with all the information, if we put a little bit more research into, being able to fund expeditions like this that can uncover more fossils and information of this dinosaur, that we could actually at one point recreate it.
Mm, well, that's a complicated topic because I know some scientists believe that that's possible, but as far I know, DNA is not preserved, so it's until I think 13,000 is only preserved. So for dinosaurs, for example, will not possible to recreate one, but you can manage DNA of chickens, for example. And that is what a colleague from Chile is doing. We have actually now, by the way, very good paleontologists in the country. So we started, this is another topic, but we started a Chilean Association of Paleontologists in 2008. And now there are a lot of members and new students that are starting to research on paleontology, which is very, very good. Because I had to move out of Chile to do my research, because at that time there were no paleontologists in the country. So I have the option to go to Argentina to work with Marta Fernandez, which is the best known paleontology on ichthyosaurs in South America, and one of the best known in the world. So she was my advisor during my bachelor thesis, which is a kind of master thesis here. And but then I had another opportunity to move to Germany with another paleontologist. So I took that one. And so I was doing my research for all the years, and then I was working in Germany because there was nothing here in the country. But then some of the researchers that they were doing also their specializations out of Chile, so in the United States, and they came back and they started doing paleontology in the country. And now they have discovered new species of dinosaurs. They are doing research on managing DNA of chickens, because they discovered that if they can stop the coding of a gene, they can reduce the numbers of the food of the chicken, and it will look like a dinosaur food. So
That's
it's
that's gonna be crazy. Imagine getting like a 30-pound chicken. Imagine that in your chicken tender nugget meal.
yeah. So it's not like the blood is preserved, but you can manage genes of actual animals, living animals, and maybe converted to dinosaurs, which is creepy and bad for the animals, but it's the way that you can
Making
do.
a specific breed of dinosaur chicken, that'd be the newest
Yeah.
thing on McDonald's dollar menu. See, it's funny because when you start looking at like paleontology, have you ever thought about another place you might want to explore, like in the future? Like, do you have a place that you've been thinking about? Because it seems like even though you might be finding a lot there, is there anywhere that you've learned that there's a certain type of dinosaur, or maybe something else you might want to study over this one?
Yeah, actually, I would like to stay here in the Patagonia. This area is so not explored, so there is a lot of things to see here. We have in this region, we are only a few paleontologists. So there is a paleobotanist, is a paleontologist who is specialized on plants, fossil plants. And there is another one that came from Brazil recently, uh, and me. So we are very few ones. They are doing research in Antarctic, and I would like to explore this subantarctic area. There are some mountains and some other glaciers. I want to check how fast are melting the glaciers and how undercover are the rocks, and if it's possible to find something around these areas in the southern Patagonia. So that's the plan to do now in summer, actually.
With studying all these kind of shifts in general, do you have to go through a process of trying to be able to understand like the rock formations, making sure that you don't step on anything that could actually mess up or maybe like wreck or hurt or damage any fossils?
Yeah, yeah. So the process is to check what is the geology of the area. So if there are rocks that will able the preservation of an animal and convert it in a fossil, or if it's some other mineralized stones that in which you will find nothing. And I will take the risk because I have seen in the geology of the areas that I want to explore now that it's not the kind of rocks that were fossils fossilized, but the geology of these areas are very poor. So because no much people have explored and nobody has done paleontological exploration in the areas. So anyway, any information will improve the ones that we have. So like I could go to some other areas where are more probabilities to find fossils easy, but I like the complicated things.
Yeah, you like the environment too. It seems like you've really kind of made it your
Yeah,
you made it your home a little bit too, somewhere where you're comfortable. So when it comes to one of the hardest things about your job, what would you say that would be?
To the hardest.
Hardest part. I'm talking about like
Uh-huh.
it's the
Yeah, yeah.
one thing you've either had happen in your life doing this, or one thing that you kind of hate about your job.
Well, hating about the job is nothing because I really love it. But complicated things is to find funding to pay the covers of expeditions. The logistic is so expensive, and I have been lucky that several of the expeditions that I have organized have been with people that support me and give me stuff for free, like transportation, food for the team and things. Then we won a grant by the German government, and they paid us for 2 expeditions, and we were able to excavate some of these ichthyosaurs. But it's a complicated situation in the country, and especially now. So I think that's the worst part to find. So I need to find a millionaire who want to find to cover the expenses of my research.
Get some of that Mark Human money. He donates that like crazy. See, what's crazy?
Yeah.
What's crazy is what I would have said was probably the cold, because just being out in that freezing environment
Ah, yeah.
24/7. And once I can't close my hands, you know how hard it must be to try and hold something to be able to excavate a fossil. A lot of people don't even think about that. Like, you're dealing in some pretty serious weather conditions, even if you're wearing gloves. You end up,
Mm,
for me, gloves cut off a big part of just my sense of touch. So even if I see a fossil and I'm really trying to examine it, the gloves have to come off, literally. I need to be able to kind of feel the indentations on it as well.
mm,
Um, but that really sucks though about the funding problem, because it seems like one of these, even though it's an amazing study, it doesn't get looked at as heavy. It's like one of those classes you take in school, like band classes, always the first to get cut. They always keep sports. And it's like you're cutting out a major part of our history. First of all, the facts of dinosaurs, they're part of our history, whether you want to admit it or not. That we've
yeah.
for as long as I think the history has really gone on, we have always recorded or looked at records for our history, for our information as people, from where we've come from to the things that were here before us, being able to predate things. It's crazy to think that that wouldn't be one of the most funded things now.
Mm. Yeah. Well, this is the way several people see, but several people don't see it. No, Um, I don't know why. It's difficult to find funding. Well, there are maybe it's also possible that I haven't tried hard enough, because I had to stop for some years doing research on this area because I was doing an specialization in Germany, a postdoc research. So I really wanted to specialize on paleopathologies, which are diseases that were recorded in the bones of dinosaurs and marine reptiles like ichthyosaurs. So I was 3 years doing this research, and I couldn't focus on continuing trying to find funding for this area. But I am pretty sure that at some point we will do it because it's very important and is unique. Actually, this fossil locality is one of the unique in the planet because of the amount of concentrated ichthyosaurs that are there. And we have adults and juveniles, and we have babies, and we have pregnant ichthyosaur with embryos. So it's not seen in any in it's not something commonly seen in other locations.
Would you say that's what makes it really kind of your favorite thing about it in general? The fact that it looks so different from a lot of the stuff that we
Yeah,
have now?
yeah,
I
yeah,
mean, when you look at dinosaurs, I think why people really like the aesthetic appeal to it. They like just how big and how like prehistoric they are. They look like something out of like out of a fantasy tale or
yeah,
something.
yeah,
Like
like
when
scary.
Yeah, and I think that's what's most interesting about it too. The fact that like we're looking at them at their bone version. We're not seeing them with the flesh or everything. But when you go and look up that research, that information on it, I mean, my favorite dinosaur was always like this what is it? Oh God, I forgot the name of it. God, these names, man, I can tell you, I can stutter on these all day.
How it looks is a carnivore or
It's
or
triceratops,
herbivore.
like a
Ah,
triceratops.
triceratops.
Yeah.
Yeah, triceratops. Uh-huh.
Like a lot of these like creatures, like I remember going to the museum so many times when I was a little kid and just, I mean, always being yelled at for touching the sculpture or touching the bones of the thing. Don't touch that. Don't put your hands on it. I'm like, sorry, I'm interested. I see with my hands, not my eyes. And it's so fascinating though, because like there is a world out there left to discover. I honestly think like with that, watching that Dino Fish documentary and everything like that, I think there's a lot more in the ocean
Yeah.
that is a lot older that we have no clue about yet. And I'm honestly waiting for that day to where it all surfaces.
Yeah. We have to go down to see them.
Now,
Yeah.
for anybody that's kind of trying to get into paleontology or just interested in the subject in general, do you have any tips for them?
Um, just to continue, because sometimes, well, actually, have a very good friend of mine is an English paleontologist, and I always use his example because he's so inspiring person. He's a very young paleontologist, and he said that he wanted to be a paleontologist since he was a kid. Which is not my case because I was interested in paleontology as an adult, but he always wanted. And in the school, the professor told her, the teacher told, no, you will never be a paleontology, and you will be poor, and you will not have enough money to live, and you can't, and blah blah blah. I think you have to push it forward because research is so important for understand our past, and to actually paleontology, we say that understanding our past will help us to be prepared for what comes to the future. And so it's something that you can develop. And also I try to connect it with the scientific tourism. So this is something that I also want to do in the future to
Scientific
echo.
scientific tourismos?
Yeah. So to show people there are some people that can come with us to the excavations, for example, and to live the real experience of working with a
Oh,
paleontology in the field.
like a tutorial or like a tourist type thing.
Yeah. So, but in with scientists. So this person will be real connected with the paleontologist and with the scientist, and learned. It's a different kind of understanding and learning if you are there in situ with the people that know about the topics.
Yeah, see, that could get a lot more people interested into
Yeah.
paleontology. I think at a young
Yeah.
age, you're introduced to dinosaurs. You have them as a toy, you have them as something like that, but it never seems to go really farther from there because other more hobbies or passions get kind of influenced in. Seems like paleontology is a really kind of rare study. You see someone that gets interested into it only because it's not really formed into their mind. You know what I mean? Like you discovering it as
Mm,
an adult, different from most paleontologists who kind of have this dream of kind of finding something or this dream for archaeology and discovering something in the sand or discovering something in stone. I think that if more people were kind of like you're saying, like brought to these places and shown like the just the process of finding the fossil, how you're becoming
mm,
so connected with the people that you're exploring with, and you're being able to actually come across something yourself. I mean, hell, who doesn't love it when they find a nice treasure every once in a while? I can tell you,
mhm.
I have never found anything with a metal detector, but one of my prized things I've ever pulled out of the sea or anywhere out of the dirt, I pulled
Yeah.
a straight up saw that used to cut wood. I pulled that out of the ocean. So that was one of my prized achievements.
Nice.
I think there's something about if we introduce more people into just this art or just this science in general of paleontology, just
Yeah.
showing them that this is this is something you can do. I think when a lot of people look at it, and kind of like how I started this podcast, we're just like kind of having you on and just trying to like talk to you about it. I'm coming from a perspective of I have no idea how the hell the process of it and all these types of things I'm asking you is because it's just not common down here. It's not a lot of people that work in paleontology, which is probably why it doesn't get much funding.
Yeah, that's true. No, I always think that the best way to learn is doing. So like classes should be more open to the field. Biology, for example, go outside and find the animals and study them. And so an open air classroom.
Would you say that one of your kind of end goals is as well, kind of with a lot of your work, would you say that you want to get something published, more like a certain finding, and kind of get your name into a book? I feel like that would be the reason why I would go into paleontology, to come across some dinosaur with like 4 heads.
Well, I think anything that I do will be a contribution because there is so little that we know about these animals. So now there are a lot of more researchers doing research on ichthyosaurs specifically, but there is still a lot that we don't know and that we have to continue researching. So I am very sure that any contribution that I do will be good, even if it's a new species or not.
Now, with the types of things that you've learned about ichthyosaurs, I
Mhm.
still can't pronounce these names, I'm telling you. But when it comes, what things have you learned just through your overall kind of working out in the field and uncovering fossils, and just being able to kind of do the research on your own?
And that I have learned about the ichthyosaurs.
Yeah, like I look at it and I see, like you were saying, a dolphin, these types of things, and that's all from looking at it. What have
Mhm.
you really furthered in your own knowledge of just the basic picture of just understanding the species in general?
Um, Specifically working in the field, I for in the past, no, in the years before, in the past, I have observed that there were some differentiations in the structure of the bones, for example, in the paddles, which is the most preserved stuff in the field. There were some ichthyosaurs that have a very long and elongated paddles with several small bones, which are the phalanges. And then I don't know, a couple of kilometers far from there, I found another one, which is also an ichthyosaur, but it has a small, short paddle, thick with small phalanges, which I think. Then I realized that wow, we have more than one species in this area because this is a paddle and this another one is also a paddle, but it's totally different. So unfortunately, the skulls of these animals are under the sediment, so we need to excavate that are not exposed. So I can compare very clear the skulls, which is one of the most important part of the skeletons.
Yeah, like a
But
different variation of the dinosaur as well. See what where you're discovering them at could be because this creature is supposed to be like over oceans worldwide. They're supposed to live around all around the world where there's ocean. So imagine if you discover one from a different area, might have different characteristics in their bone structure based on their location of where they lived.
yeah, exactly, because it also depends of the ecosystem where they are living and why these paddles are so different. If they are coming in, if they are living in the same area, it's probably because one was able to dive deeper than the other ones, because it was feeding from some kind of other animal. One was feeding on fishes, and the other, for example, on some other invertebrates. And so these are questions that we need to solve, and we will be able to solve them after excavation, because we can excavate the complete skeleton. So I said most of these skeletons are exposed by the glacier retreatment, but some parts of the skeletons are still under the sediment. So we need to take the stones and to remove the sediment, and then to and then we will be able to describe the species. properly, and then deposit it to deposit it in a collection, and then in a museum, so people can visit and see this animal, because it's complicated to people to go to the glacier, of course, because the logistics is complicated and it's not an area open to the people, to the public. Yeah, so they need these animals in a closest area where they can see the skeletons.
With like what exactly, like what's the height and weight of these things? I mean, you said that they look like a little bit like they can get mistaken for dolphins, but are they like as long as
Yeah.
a dolphin? Are they like 6 feet?
I don't know about feet, but I can tell you meters. Um, we have some specimens that are between 3 and 4 meters long. I don't know how many feet are that.
That's about
A ver,
6 feet.
I will check.
Yeah, that's
A converser.
okay, you're typing it into a converser.
So 3 is 120 feet, maybe.
Oh, whoa.
But we have some other of 9 meters long. So
They're basically they're huge. I mean, I'm still stumbling on even this being able to translate the name of this creature. I'm trying to figure out who named this thing. I'm reading a little bit about it too. That it was a 19th century guy named Henry de la. I don't want to butcher his last name. I think it's Bache, and William Coney bear in 1821. Wow. They called it fish lizard in Greek. That's interesting. See,
I
what's so
yeah.
fascinating about like just how I just did right there, looking up this creature, like I'm starting to get more information on it. It's supposed to give me a little bit more knowledge. And now I'm having a wonder if I like trying to explore and find this thing out for myself. Like how many dinosaurs out there that people don't know about? Like there's
Yeah.
so many, only because we just get fed the basic ones on television. You never get to see anything like these in the movies.
Mm, yeah. No, there is a lot of more. There is a lot of more to find, of course. A lot of. How was it that a colleague was? Sorry, I was thinking about something that a colleague just said a few months ago, that we crossed from how many it was, 500 something species of dinosaurs to more than 3,000 or something in a few years. So it's crazy how many new species are being discovered every year, actually.
What you just said is the reason why I believe there is a Bigfoot out there, because the statistical fact of cryptozoology is that there's an estimated between 9.6 million species left undiscovered still on this planet. They estimate, I think it's 3.2 left undiscovered on land, and a good 6.4, I think, is the proper numbers left in the sea. And I just say, like, with all this,
Yeah,
because
could be.
we're getting so many variations and so many different species being discovered today. Like, what else is there left to uncover that lived here long ago?
Mm. Yeah, it's amazing. I think we will not have enough life to discover everything. And it's very sad because there are some species that are now getting extinct in this time. And we are discovering the ones that were extincted in the past now.
It's crazy to see where we're going with it. I definitely we need to slow down on the iPhone 20 and work more towards trying to find more interesting things like a prehistoric dinosaur.
Yeah,
Well,
yeah, yeah.
thank you so much, Dr. Judith, for doing the podcast. I really appreciate you coming out and taking the time to be able to at least explain to me a little bit of your work and teach me how to say the name of this fish, because I'm still stumbling.
Yeah, Ichthyosaur.
Ichthyosaur. Well, I really want to give you here a minute at the end if you have anything you want to promote, like your Instagram page or anything where people can follow some of your work.
Yeah, I have an Instagram page that I recently started to promote my research here in the southern Patagonia. My name is Dr. Judith Pardo-Pérez. And yeah, you can find some pictures that I am posting there about the ichthyosaurs that we found in the border of the glaciers in Patagonia. and stuff that I have researched in my years in Germany and working in Europe.
And I will
So
make sure that
thank you very much.
I'll make sure all your links go in the description as well, so people can
Yeah.
find your profile and your awesome research as well.
Thank you very much. Thanks. Well, thank you to you for the interview. It was very nice. Actually, it's my first podcast in English, so I was very worried about not understanding.
Well, hey, you got to talk to me for your first podcast. I don't know if that's a good or a bad thing.
It's good. It's good. Very good.
Thank you so much for being on this episode of Out of the Blank, and stay tuned for our next episode.